Recording. Hi, Martin.
Hi.
Thanks for joining me today.
Well, you're welcome. It's my pleasure.
Briefly describe the path that led you to FASPs.
That's a fascinating question. I went to University of Washington starting in 2012, and I graduated in 2017. And I knew that I wanted to do something with my French degree, which I received from UW. And I wasn't sure exactly what that was. I did have some experience in education and curriculum and in education in a way. And I found FASPs. Actually, there was a couple mentions of a former UW professor of mine had students that went to FASPs maybe 6 or 7 years ago, and he mentioned the school to me. And then when I was applying for different jobs, I found the Garderie program in FASPs, and I was really excited by that. And it was close to Seattle, so I could get there as well. FASPs was just a way for me to use my French in a professional setting, and at the same time work with kids, because that's one of my passions.
You said you had other educational experience. What was that?
So before I graduated from University of Washington, I also did a program in Madrid, Spain. I was working with 8-month to 36-month-old Spanish infants, teaching them English through a linguistics program at the University of Washington. It was a really incredible experience, very unique, in that it was in Madrid, it was very groundbreaking research for exactly how much language these infants need to learn a second language, or to kind of advance in a second language. Mm-hmm. So I worked in a Spanish school, a Spanish daycare. I worked also with the company Lindemood Bell, and so that is kind of reading and math and holistic curriculum support for students that have any sort of reading challenges, so dyslexia or hyperlexia, or certain challenges with reading, or just extra support. So it's a private company that's, I think, based in San Luis Obispo in California, but they have centers around the world. And so I worked with them for about 1.5 years, and even concurrently while I was first hired with FASPs. And that was another educational experience that led me to FASPs, just because I saw the private sector, but I wanted to see kind of what more of the school-centered environment was like.
Mm-hmm. Explain ELL specialist. What do you do with ELL?
So ELL, first off, stands for English Language Learners. Normally, most people are familiar with ESL, so English as a second language. But because so many of our students come in with 2 languages already that are not English, there's been a trend to change from ESL to ELL to make it a little bit more inclusive. So I work with students that come in for our lower school, and this year with middle school students that come in that need support in English, to be able to function in a 100% English classroom to the best of their ability. So right now I'm working with 2 first graders, 2 second graders, 2 sixth graders, and a 7th grader. And what we do is any number of games or activities, or practicing English in a more controlled environment, so that when they transition into their full English classrooms, they have all the tools that they need, either grammar or vocabulary or just English comprehension, to be able to thrive in that environment. The specialist part comes in because I'm also working with Annette Hines, the reading specialist. I work with a few fifth graders who need support in reading, and I do any sort of reading activities or help support their work in the classroom as well. It's rather a new, interesting position, I would say, and I really have to thank Benjamin and Ren for making this happen, because it's very unique, and I get to work with students all the way from pre-K through 8th grade in this position, so I'm really lucky for that.
Where do you see yourself in the next few years?
You know, the future is really hazy for me. I really enjoy working in the school environment and seeing how the school system works, at least in this way as well. I really enjoy knowing how all of the different parts of school work together. So from gardery in after school to after school learning in middle school, and how one change in lower school can affect the upper school, the bigger picture, so to speak. And on top of that, I love working with all kids. So in terms of my future plans, I'm not really sure yet. I would like to spend a couple more seasons at FASPS, but I'm not entirely sure what the future will bring. So I think we'll have to wait and see what opportunities arise within FASPS or elsewhere, and that will really determine where I end up in a few years.
Tell us about what EAs do.
That's a big question. Educational assistants are the backbone of socio-emotional learning at FASPS. We have a very unique role because at the same time that we aid and instruct more curricula matters within the classroom, we spend the most time with students outside the classroom, either in gardery or at recess or supervising lunch, or even taking kids to gym or to the JCC to do pool. And that allows us the opportunity to see kids kind of when they're not in a structured classroom environment. We see them when they're just hanging out with their friends, when they're talking about what they did over the weekend, when they're discussing plans for next week or next month. And that's a really unique opportunity because a lot of adults don't have that role. Most of the teachers here focus on curriculum because that's what they were hired to do, to really instruct and teach and prepare students for the next grade. However, educational assistants, we provide a shoulder to cry on sometimes for students. We allow students to become vulnerable. We allow and we let students let their guard down so that we can help them in ways that are outside the classroom. And honestly, the role of the EA is really special, and it's one thing that I've really come to value with my time here. Does that answer your question?
That's perfect. Last year you were working with second and third graders in particular, and this year you're working with middle schoolers. Briefly tell me about the difference.
Oh man, there's so much that can be said about the differences. So middle school has a lot more freedom, I think, in terms of education and their choices that they make. So that's natural. As they get a little bit older, they have the ability to decide more for themselves, to be a little bit more autonomous. So in second and third grade, you kind of have the same class schedule for a lot of, well, almost the whole school year. But one thing in middle school you can do is have kind of electives. So you can choose whether you study Spanish or Chinese, Mandarin for an example. And while some students choose to to learn Spanish because it's more similar to French. Structurally, it might be a little bit easier. Others have jumped at the chance to learn Mandarin with Miss Tang, and they also get the opportunity to travel to these different countries. So Beijing, not countries, but places. So Beijing for the Mandarin students and Costa Rica for the Spanish students. So there's a lot more freedom, so to speak, in middle school. Whereas when you're in second and third grade, you're still learning about how to write and read and do basic math. So there's more of a focus on building those foundations versus middle school. The expectation is that you have them, and then how will you apply them? It's been challenging in terms of working with ELL and middle schoolers, because that's something that's new for me this year. And what I really appreciate is how the middle schoolers are able to dictate the course of their own ELL sessions. So while we're having a conversation, they will jump in with a completely new topic, and then we'll discuss that and incorporate vocab or incorporate grammar structures into the lesson a little bit on the fly. And that's something that is very different than working with first graders or second graders, and something that I appreciate as well. They're really ingenious, so to speak.
What distinguishes FASPs from other school environments you've worked in?
Well, I can't speak for any school, any normal school environment around here, but what I really appreciate is the community feel of it. When you're working in a private company, like a reading company, either Kumon or Lindenwood Bell, there's not really a holistic focus on the well-being of the child, socio-emotionally or for the curriculum. However, you can really feel that sense of belonging and the sense of just community that FASPS offers each of its students. You have teachers that play an important role, you have educational assistants that play an incredible role, and also the parents, the FASPS parents that do an incredible job. I'm saying incredible too much, sorry.
That's okay.
That that help make the school really special for the students. Not to mention all the awesome admin.
Of course.
So that's something that's really unique, just that you have so many willing people who are there to help and eager to help, and that they know that you have to have a little bit of codependence on each other to make this the best place for their students.
What are you planning for next week, the Gardery Camp?
That is a big old secret, Leah. No, I have been helping plan for the kindergarten section of Break Camp, and we have a really awesome spring-themed 7 days that we're going to look at. So without giving all of the activities away, one thing we're excited about is dyeing eggs and giving the students a little bit of lesson on how to make rainbows from a lot of different sources. So those are just 2 activities, and of course there's the trip to Luther Burbank Park. Always a huge hit. We go down to the beach, you can go in the water, play frisbee, build a sandcastle, what have you.
What day will that be?
That'll be Thursday of the first week of Gardery Camp, so mark your calendars.
Thank you so much, Martin.
You're welcome, Leah. It was my pleasure.